Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. I'm Dr. Schaff, and I'm the director of the HEAL program, Humanities, Ethics, Art, and Law program here at USC. And I want to welcome you to today's art event. Today's event brings the work of artist patients to our community in order to foster enhanced understanding between patients and future healthcare professionals, and we're so glad to welcome you. Ted Meyer is our artist in residence, and I'm going to let him introduce our guest in a moment, whose work is in the gallery. I hope you've had a chance to see that, but we'll also get to see it here this afternoon. Generally, as those of you who've been here before know, we usually have a clinician whose specialty is in the area of expertise, given whatever illness or condition our patient artist is dealing with. But today, all of the clinicians whose specialty is in dermatology or allergy immunology are actually in clinic, and we were unable to invite anyone from those specialties. So I'm a pediatrician. I'll do my best if there are any questions you have about any of the medical aspects of this condition, but I think that Ted and our guest will have a lot to talk about. So Ted, I'll let you introduce our artist, and thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Ariana Page Russell is an artist that many people told me about, and I think partially just because her artwork is so different. You know, usually here at Keck we have people that have had transplants and crazy chronic diseases that require lots of intervention by you guys, but she was sort of using her body as a canvas. So I just thought it was so interesting. She's shown this work all over the world, at museums and medical schools, so we're very happy to have her here. All right, so I always start out so you guys know how prevalent whatever we're talking about is. So, what's the exact pronunciation?
I say dermatographia.
Dermatographia. We have 2 to 5% of the population have this to some extent, so that comes out to about 9.75 million people. And if skin or autoimmune or these sorts of illnesses are what you're interested in, I went to the American Academy of Dermatology site, and here's a couple other numbers for you and a couple other conditions, and you can see. So if you are interested in this, you will have lots of chances for clients and people to do interesting work with. All right, so I'm going to have you read something off your website to start us off. So why don't you read, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so this is an excerpt from my artist statement on my website. The sensitivity of my skin is transparency too. What shows up on the surface reflects what's going on inside. All of my work has been about this capacity of skin to reveal internal happenings and how permeable that makes us.
So we always talk about how artists are telling their story through their art, and their images let us know not specifically the medical details of their lives, but the emotional details. So in your statement, you're talking about what's going on the outside is reflective of what's going on the inside. So why don't you talk about that for a sec?
My interest in skin actually started before I started making art with my dermatographia, and it started because my face blushes really easily. I have fair skin and just very sensitive. So anything, even if I wasn't embarrassed, I'd be like laughing too hard, and my face would get red, and people would always say, "Oh my God, your face is so red," and "Oh, look at you, you red face," and then that makes it worse. If any of you know what it feels like to blush. So that's how it started. It was like thinking about how that thing that my body just does, even though I don't want it to, it's revealing something. There's some kind of emotion happening and it's showing up on my face. So then the way that this has kind of carried over through to the dermatographia is for me, my dermatographia was kind of a bell, like a warning bell or something. It was like, pay attention to what you're doing, take better care of yourself, and you need to make some changes. So I started exercising, drinking more water, eating better, and just taking better care of myself in general. And then over the years, my dermatographia has lessened. So that was what I was thinking about in that regard. But just how, if there's something wrong internally, a lot of times it can show up on the skin.
So, as I was saying, we've had artists here before of everything from heart transplants to, cystic fibrosis, neurological problems, MS. The flashier things that when you guys were thinking about med school, you're like, I'm going to help those people and cure that. But this, in a way, it seems like a minor thing. You've got this condition, you get flush, you go like this, you get something that shows up for 20 or 30 minutes, and then it sort of goes away. So why is it a chronic illness like this something that they should be as concerned about it when their patients come to them?
I think in all my years of doing this work, the emotional component is what really stands out. Like, especially this often shows up in teenage years, and being a teenager is so hard anyway. And then if you have this weird thing that your skin does that people, will probably tease you about, then it's really, it can be traumatizing. And that's one part of it. The other part is the itchiness. Some people have it so bad that they will just be, woken up in the night, just unable to stop scratching, and they can't sleep because they're so itchy. So that doesn't happen, 24 hours a day, but there are moments where the itch is unbearable. And a lot of people take antihistamines for the condition, but even some people say the antihistamines don't work. So
where would you put yourself? Because you know the community of people that have this condition. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you put yourself?
And being the more intense?
Yeah.
I would say I'm down to like a 3-ish. But when I was younger, it was more like a 5 or 6. But I never had, 9 or 10 status, like some other people who have reached out to me.
All right, so let's talk about medically how you got diagnosed, when this presented on you, what was happening with you that you felt you had to get to talk to a doctor.
Well, first of all, I didn't know that I had some condition. I thought my skin was just really sensitive, and that if you have really sensitive skin, your skin just welts. I didn't realize that that's like not what normal skin does. So there was that. So I actually did not get diagnosed until I was in my 20s. And it kind of is, I'm going to tell the story a little bit later when we're talking, but basically I had some people tell me, you should go to a doctor and find out what that is, because that's not normal. So I was actually in grad school at the time in Seattle. I went to University of Washington, Seattle, and I was really lucky. I went to their medical center, and the doctor that I saw, she was able to diagnose me immediately. She was just like, yep, dermatographia, there you go. And it felt so good to have a diagnosis. It felt so good to have a name and to just be able to do some research. And then, that's like what really fueled my art. And I'll get back to that. But a lot of people have told me over the years that their doctors don't know what it is. They don't have a name for the condition. They don't know about dermatographia. I think it's getting more common and there's more knowledge circulating now, but a lot of people told me nobody could identify what this was.
Yeah, if you look it up right now, you'll get dermatographia, but you'll also get skin writing, which I think looking at this image is really apt. So let's talk about some of your art. Other people that we've shown, they do artwork about their illness, but you are the artwork. It's a much more personal thing. So talk about your process a little bit. You're scratching yourself, how long you have to take a photo, your whole process, how you come up with your images, and why you're using your own body as your canvas.
Okay, so this image, for example, this is something that I made while I was a grad student. This was part of my MFA thesis show. And I was thinking about, kind of back to the transparency of skin, or that idea of like revealing what's happening inside. Like, what if the skin had its own language that it can communicate to us with? So I was thinking it might be like just sounds, if we could, so it'd be like, ooh, ah, just like having these more like sounds instead of words. So this is actually says ooh or oh. And my son, he's 6, he's looking at this recently and he's like, what is that? Is it ooh or oh or something, But I said, it can be both. So also just the way that, like, I'm interested in how patterns look on the body. So the way that if it's just a repeating O, it kind of forms its own pattern. And the way that I made these marks is with a knitting needle. I've always used a knitting needle as my stylus, and they're not sharp. They're very dull, just like a plastic knitting needle, and it just a very light pressure, and I can just draw something. The only problem is if I want a really specific design, I have to use some kind of stencil or something, because the image doesn't show up for about 5 minutes. So like this is freehand, so I was able to just draw these O's, and then it lasts for about 20 to 30 minutes. But kind of like prime photographing time is about 5 to 7 minutes in before it starts to fade, but after it's had time to really get bold like this.
And you have another photographer come, because you always did your own photography too. You have another photographer ready, you do your pattern, as soon as it shows up, they take the photo, or how does it work?
For this series, I was actually doing all the photographs myself, and this is film. So, this was 2004. So it was before digital became really prevalent. And I was using mirrors to get different angles. And I can't remember where this was. It's so long ago. I think on my stomach or leg. And so I could just, actually use the camera and point it at myself. Nowadays with digital, it's a lot easier. So I'll set up the camera on the tripod and get everything focused and ready to go before I make the drawing. So then I have plenty of time to do it.
Was there a break with you where instead of maybe trying to cover up, or maybe you never did, you decide, I'm just going to put myself out there? Like, was there a mental condition of like, this is what's going on with me, and letting everybody see?
Well, maybe I'll do my story about how I started making art with this now.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I was Ted and I were talking about this the other day, and I was saying, like, I did not set out to make art about dermatographia. It kind of chose me. There's this whole story. I was living in Seattle, and I was collecting this really beautiful kelp from the Puget Sound, and it's like pink. It's like this bumpy pink kelp, and I don't see it down here. But I was really interested in it because it looked like skin. So I've always been interested in skin and the body, even, as a budding young photographer in high school, college. So I brought some of it home to photograph in my apartment, and the sun was coming in, I'm photographing, and I accidentally scratched my leg. And I noticed that the dots, the little bumps that were forming on my leg looked like the kelp. So I photographed them. It was like, oh, wow, look at this on my leg. Photographed it, not thinking it was going to be anything. And then when I had my studio visit with my professors and peers and other grad students, they saw the kelp photographs, which is what I wanted to talk about, but then they saw their dermatographia photographs on my desk, and they're like, wait a second, what's this? This is what we want to talk about. What's going on here? And then this is when they were actually the ones who prompted me to go get a diagnosis, because they were like, this is not normal. No, this is like, I've never seen this before. What is this? So then it was like, I never thought anybody would care about skin or what happened to my skin or dermatographia or anything. Well, at that point, I didn't even have a name for it. But turns out people did. So I was encouraged by the people around me in my, University of Washington community to pursue it. And like I said, this was part of my MFA thesis show. I did my MFA thesis on all of this work, and just took off from there.
So back to the medical part, did you look for a dermatologist specifically, or did you have a general practitioner? How did you find the doctor?
I don't think she had a specialty. When I'm trying to remember, it was almost 20 years ago. She was at the medical center, and I think she just happened to know about it. I don't think she was even a dermatologist.
Let's talk about this one. This one's more actual words. What's going on?
Funny story about this one, actually. I had a dermatologist maybe about 10 years ago or so, and I told him about how I have dermatographia, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, check out this picture of somebody with dermatographia," and he showed me this image. So that was like, "Oh yeah, that's me." And he's like, "Oh," like thought it was really weird though, I do get a lot of like, "Oh, you make art with that?" Oh, but for this one, this was also part of my MFA thesis show. And so, this is about 2004, and thinking about the body communicating and what it might look like, or words showing up on skin, sounds on skin. And I just transcribed a dream that I had had a few nights before, but like very abstractly. It's just, so you can make out some words on there, but you can't actually read it. You can't read like what the dream was. And I don't even remember what the dream was. And it's been so long, but yeah, you're not meant to read it verbatim. It's just like maybe certain letters or words will catch your eye.
So this one, I love this image. And so many artists work with patterning, and a lot of scarification work is patterns. So like on this one, how did this one happen? And also it's read all the way around. It's not just by where you were rubbing yourself.
Yeah, so that's something else. And again, like if I were to try to recreate this image, I would not be able to get this again because my skin doesn't do this anymore. But that is part of it. It's like the welts form, but then all the histamine that's rushing to the surface, that's also causing redness. And so that's why you can see that kind of like echo of the welts. And this one is exclamation points or lowercase i's. It's almost like if the body is like exclaiming.
So this one is not in the show, but
Right.
I love this image.
Thanks.
So why don't you talk about this for a sec?
This one, it came a little bit later. That last one that you showed was also part of the MFA work. And then this was like my next body of work after that, after I graduated and, I was like out in the real world. And I was inspired by other patterns that would cover surfaces like wallpaper. And it's no accident. My dad is a wallpaper hanger. He's in Portland, Oregon. So I would go, when I was living in Seattle, I would go visit him and help him hang wallpaper, and I learned the trade a little bit. This was some wallpaper that actually I didn't get from him. I found it somewhere else, but I made it into a stencil. I just really loved the kind of damask pattern of it, and turned it into a stencil and then just traced it on my stomach. And then I also had, this was in a show at Lake Tahoe that was like hanging on the wall, and then there was also, I used photographs of skin that I cut into the shapes of that pattern and then put those on the wall. So it was like the pattern kind of spread from skin to the wall.
Just looking at how your body reacts, can you wear tight things? Can you wear something where maybe a piece of metal hits you and repeatedly, and what happens?
Yeah, I wouldn't opt to wear metal. But I can pretty much wear whatever. I do have to be careful about certain materials that can be itchy. But otherwise, it's not too much of a problem. One thing that I have found over the years as I get older is I can't wear earrings anymore. I have my conchas pierced and I can only wear gold. I can't even wear stainless steel. So I don't know if that's related to the dermatographia or not, but otherwise, no. I mean, it definitely feels better to not wear really tight clothes, but I think anybody might say that.
So are natural fabrics better than synthetics or other way around?
No, not necessarily. I think it just depends on the fabric and the item of clothing.
More patterning?
Yes, this went with the last one. Although this is not a wallpaper image. This was actually, I had a sweater that was like a vintage loose knit pattern, kind of. It made a pattern, the knitting. And so I just put the knitting needle just directly through the pattern of the sweater and was able to make that design. So like thinking about if clothes left a mark, and sometimes they do, if you wear pants and you're sitting down for a while, it'll leave a mark.
So I started, when I was looking at your work, I started looking at African scarification. And I thought, well, maybe it would be great if I could find one that was almost the same pattern as some of the stuff that you do. So this is sort of the closest I found. One of the things that's been happening in the art world in the last couple of years is just repeated patterns, marking systems repeated continuously. And I think if you look at some of the African artwork I found in your work, there seems to be a real convergence in how you approach decorating your skin along with some of these people. It's not a question, I'm just, as an artist, what do you think?
I have had a lot of people actually ask me if those are scars and if it's scarification. And it's like really hard for some people to look at because they think that I'm harming myself. Where I don't know, I mean, I think that scarification is beautiful. I have looked at that in the past because I've been asked about it. So I feel like I need to be aware of what is happening in other cultures. But I'm always inspired by how people use pattern, especially on the body. But yeah, I think it's beautiful. And it's an interesting way for our work to connect too, since you make work about scars.
All right, well, since we talked about that, so I have a big project that I do about people's scars from accidents, operations, war, and you have of your work. And one of the things that we've talked about is that people tend to reach out to us. In my case, a lot of times they're looking online for scar medications, things to mitigate their scars. And I don't know exactly what they'd be Googling for you, but we both get lots of emails and pictures from people reaching out, looking for community, because a lot of times they don't know people that are going through the same thing. So you've brought a couple of these letters that people have sent you. And also, before you read them, talk about the responsibility as an artist doing work about an illness, and then people reach out to you. You sort of become an advocate just by doing your work.
Yeah, I feel like I've become kind of a spokesperson for dermatographia because of everything that's happened. So that one of the images, a couple images back, my friend was updating my website for me, and he did this surprise thing. He didn't tell me about it, but he submitted one of my images to one of the ones where I did the wallpaper design, and he submitted it to a blog called It's Nice That. And at the time, they were really big, so he wasn't sure if they were going to publish the image or not. Turns out they did, and it went viral. And like for that time, this was like 2008. It was a pretty big deal. It was like my website went down. Like that was how many people were looking at my work after that. So then I started getting all these emails, and one of the emails was, the headline was like, "Hello from Kelsey at ABC News 2020." And I was like, oh, this isn't real. And what is this? And then it turns out it was real. So they flew me to New York. I was still living in Seattle at the time. They flew me to New York, and we did this interview. So I was on 2020, and you can actually find the clip on YouTube. It's pretty funny, but some of these letters that I have with me today are in response to that segment that they saw in 2020. And I think it's cool that it was something that was like, it's like mainstream media, you know, it's not some art outlet. It's not like Art in America TV show or Art 21 or something. It is like mainstream media. And they have interesting stories. So here is one that was in response to seeing that segment. Hey, Ariana, thanks for taking the time to write me back. I know you must be busy. Doesn't your body itch? God, my skin is so uncomfortable. I watched your interview on ABC and you didn't seem bothered at all by it. Ha ha. I was like, isn't that making her crazy? It doesn't hurt me when I do that necessarily, but it makes me itch. Even when I take pills to calm it, the rash still comes up, though not as bad. After I read that article about you, I went on a message board about it, and some people's reaction is so bad that medicine doesn't even work for them. It sucks because since it's totally non-life threatening, nothing will ever be done for these people by the medical community. For me, God forbid Zyrtec was ever taken off the market, or I'd seriously just have to go and take a dirt nap. I don't know what a dirt nap is. It's that uncomfortable. If you do a site, you should have a page that gives info about all spectrums of the people so that people like that have a voice. I know for you it's more about the art of it, but for me it's something that I have to live with every day that is ridiculously irritating. If you featured something about the negative aspects of it, I would surely send you pictures of my skin. If it raises awareness for people who are suffering, I'm totally for it. I'm for it either way, but I just don't want people to think it's something as simple as that and further dismiss it, you know? Anyway, thanks for bringing this subject to light. Having never met anyone with this problem, it was really interesting to see it on TV. So that one is, I thought that was a good one to read because, you know, it's like, and like what you were saying earlier, well, this condition doesn't seem to be that bad. But for somebody who experiences that daily, it is. It's very bad.
What did you, I don't know if you have your response, but what did you write this person back?
Oh, just, you know, I mean, I've always taken time to write people back with compassion and understanding that, you know, I'm very fortunate that I've never had to take antihistamines. I've also chosen not to. But, you know, it's like, it's not for everybody. Some people can find ways to heal their skin and it will be okay like me, or some people will need to rely on antihistamines for a long time. So I have made a site since then too. Like she said, if you make a site. So I do always talk about how there's people who experience it differently than me. But I always want to be like hearing people and compassionate and responding so they know that I hear them and it's not just about me. And, you know, even though it's my skin and my body. But another one that I was wanting to read is this kid who's 16 years old. She says she's had it since she was 9 and never knew what it was. I had gone to my doctor and he had no clue what it was. Until tonight, I had no clue anyone else lived with this strange yet somewhat fun condition. I am very much into photography and art and never looked at my skin order, not really a disorder to me anymore, as a way to express my creativeness. Tonight, my mom was just flipping through the channels in her room when suddenly she shouted, "Go to 2020, hurry." I went to the channel and a wave of calm washed over me, seeing you not being held back like I am, but don't intend to be anymore because of dermatographia really just opened up my head. So I just really want to say thank you for putting a name to the weird raised skin designs that I get by just bumping or scratching into nothing. And thank you for making me think my skin is beautiful. I mean, I can't even, like, I'm getting a little teary-eyed right now. Like, I can't, this is an old email and it still does that to me every single time. It's just, that is like, nothing could ever be better than that. You know, that kind of connection.
Yeah, I've literally gotten emails where I open it up and somebody's from Africa, their hand had been chopped off during one of the civil wars. And it was sort of like, I thought you'd like to see this with a little happy face, you know. And it's amazing because everybody, once they know they can talk to you, it opens up a whole thing, especially if they felt isolated.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times people do because it's something abnormal, you know, and something that is considered unsightly because it's different, or, you know, we like expect everything to be all airbrushed like it is in the magazines or whatever. And that's not real. And then there was another one that I was going to read, but it just is basically like, we didn't know there was anyone else with this condition until last night when I happened to turn on the TV. I have asked doctors for years. They looked at me like I was crazy. Dermatographia has been a big part of our lives. Thank you for letting the world know about this. It's been hard on Katie, especially in the younger years. She deals with it on a daily basis and has learned to live with it. We think it's wonderful that you've taken this and made it a positive thing.
So when you went to the doctor and you got diagnosed and had a name for it, was it sort of like, okay, I'm not crazy, I'm not?
Yeah, it was a lot of relief. A lot of relief to be able to have a name for it and to just understand it. Like, I'm a person who really likes to understand what's going on. Like, if a doctor or somebody says, you have this, and then I'm like, okay, and like, what do I do about it? Why is this happening? What can be done? What, you know, like, I want to know everything I can about that condition or whatever it is. So I was able to do all this research, and it just like, it opened up so much for me. And then it just started to make a lot of sense for me to continue making art about it.
So in the first, I think it was the second letter, the young girl said she doesn't have a disorder anymore. She just has an order. And skin order. And you had told me a story about a doctor talking to you about you were suffering from something, but you didn't feel you were suffering. So since a lot of these guys are new, why don't you talk about the importance of words when they're talking to not just you, but to all their patients?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's just kind of like medical terminology. You say like, oh, well, this person is suffering from dermatographia, or this person suffers from, I don't know, whatever condition. But maybe they aren't suffering with it. Maybe there's discomfort, but maybe they wouldn't call it suffering. So it's like saying that somebody is suffering from something. I feel like that's naming their experience in a way that is unnecessary. So if ever anybody writes about my work or anything, I always make sure that they don't say that, because it's just terminology. People just default to that.
The one that I hear a lot is, because of my condition, is, and I hear people refer to other people with it, oh, you're brave. But I don't feel having a genetic illness, it's not like I chose it and wanted to fight a battle. So I'm not brave. You're not brave. This is the lot we got.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to go on to some other series you've done with skin that are not as distinctive with the skin writing.
Yeah, this piece is downstairs, and it's called Blanche because, again, I was thinking of the blush. Like, that blushing has really stuck with me. But what I printed these images, those are actually, it's a collage made with photographs of skin. And so each piece is about like a little, maybe bigger than a quarter or something. And then I glued them down onto a piece of board. But in the dark room, when I was printing these, because I was using film and I had access to a dark room after grad school, I was still working in the photo lab. I was printing them so that that some of them would look really red, and then some of them would look really light, so that it would kind of look like it was like the piece was flushing when I made the collage. So it's not like so directly related to the dermatographia, but it is skin. And then I think, what was the next one? Did you have? Yeah, so then these came with that other one too. So what I'm wearing, those are both me. And I had a friend in Seattle. She actually lives here now, but she's an amazing hair and makeup artist, but she was just getting started. So she was like doing all this stuff for me. And I wish I could find somebody like that again. Now she's way too busy and she does something else. But those that I'm wearing are tattoos that I made with photographs of skin. So the collage that Ted showed before, that was just one of them. But there's a small one that's also downstairs that is looks like not the triangle, the diamond shape, but the other one. And it's made with photographs of skin. Then I would scan that collage and then print out the tattoos myself. So I have this paper where I can make my own tattoos. So then I was putting the skin designs back onto my skin as kind of a way of like directing the result, like directing, if thinking about the blush again, like directing where the blush would go, or directing the welts even in a way that I could make them more precise. And even though they're not images of welts, but they make me think of that.
All right, and the third wall and series.
Right, yeah. And actually, I have some temporary tattoos with me, so if you're interested, I have some if you want one. This is actually one of my latest. This is from my latest series called Bloom Back, and I was thinking about the flowers and flora around, and it kind of started because like during COVID, my son and I were spending a lot of time outside and collecting some of the flora that grows around. I live in Altadena, so I'm right next to the mountains. And this is a wild horehound, which grows, it's a native plant. So I was collecting these plants and then seeing what kind of patterns they would make on my skin. So it's kind of like a cross between an imprint and the dermatographic response. But again, like this is the peak response, and it's not like those images that you saw earlier that were like really, really welted. So, but thinking about if my skin is responding or talking or doing something, it's blooming back. Like thinking about the dermatographic welt is like a bloom. It's blooming back at the plant. So that's why the series is called Bloom Back. And same with this one. These are marigold seeds that my son and I collected and from our yard, and they didn't make the welts quite like the last one, but it's also a different texture. And again, my skin just doesn't do what it used to. If you think about that one with my legs, with like the words on my legs, that was like so extreme, and then I just can't get that response anymore.
So this is our last image. All the others are downstairs if you haven't had a chance to go down. So one thing I always mention in every talk is that all the artists we show here at the gallery downstairs are making art that would not have happened if they had not had some sort of condition or operation or whatever chronic illness. How do you think your art would have been had you not had this as a focus? Because I always like to point out to you guys, a lot of creativity, a lot of writing, all these things come from stress and people being, it's not unusual for a writer to write about their misery, but people aren't always used to seeing artists deal with adversity visually. So what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, there was always that interest in the body and skin and the blush. And so I would have, what I was doing is like what I was doing with the kelp. I was kind of finding stand-ins for that idea of skin and the body. And then it was like, oh, I can just use skin. I don't have to find a stand-in. So, I was like trying sculpture and all kinds of things, but photography has just always been my favorite thing to do. So maybe I would have been photographing other people's skin, and I don't know. Actually, that's something that I would really like to do, is photograph other people's dermatographia. I've never actually done that. I've had people send me their own images of their dermatographia, but I've never had like models come into my studio and to photograph.
Dr. Shav, would you like to add a medical angle to this? And if anybody has any questions, there's a microphone over here.
Yeah, thank you. So interesting, and thank you so much for sharing your story and your work. I wish my dermatology colleagues were here, because they would tell us a little bit about the medical etiology. From what I learned, and I did learn about it, I can't remember whether it was in med school or residency, but it's not totally understood. It is thought to be a histamine a mast cell-mediated process for some people, not for everyone. Hence why some antihistamines would work for some people and not for others. Certain medical conditions can make it occur or exacerbate it. But what I found most interesting, when we teach about dermatology, and when you have that system in your curriculum or come to sessions on dermatology, one of the things that dermatologists tell us is that the skin is the largest organ in the body. And I found it interesting that that's, what you are interested and drawn to, regardless of, your condition. But also, they will tell us, there's a whole lecture in our curriculum on skin manifestations of systemic illness. So when you talked about your skin or skin talking or revealing emotions, the skin does tell us a lot about what's going on. And I love that, the sort of metaphor of that became the way, you express yourself. And yet, medically and scientifically, it is also telling us stuff about many conditions that we have. So I think this is just fascinating.
You. Well, yeah, another thing that you just reminded me, I've had a lot of people say that they also have some kind of autoimmune condition. So a lot of people think that dermatographia is a non-immune condition, but it's technically not, correct?
As far as I understand it, it's not.
That's what I've been told. It's somehow linked to autoimmune.
Does anyone have any questions for our artist or for Ted?
I think so, but I don't. But I think not always. I mean, because it's so different for everybody. But like I was telling you, because you said you're a pediatrician, yeah. My son, he's 6, and he seems to have it a little bit. So, but nobody else in my family has it that I know of. I was the first one. And then the other thing, I don't think I actually answered your question earlier. I don't know exactly when it developed. Because like I said, I didn't know it was a thing that I had. I thought it was just my skin was just really sensitive. But I think that I started getting the welts like when I was a teenager.
We were talking on the phone, trying to get our questions squared away. And I just kept imagining if I had this when I was like 8 or 9, and I would have just sat in school when the teacher was talking and drawing all day and paying absolutely no attention. So it probably popped up a little later, because it would have been amazing to just do art all day. And I couldn't have gotten yelled at for drawing on the desk like I used to when I was a kid.
Yeah, I know. Like I said the other day, it's funny because it never occurred to me to do something like that until it kind of happened itself. Like it really, I did not make those initial marks that I first photographed. It just happened by accident. So I feel like dermatographia was like, you must photograph me, like made me do it, because I just didn't realize that was even possible to make a drawing on my skin.
This is her website, if you want to follow her, or her Instagram. And then you were saying you also have a blog. So why don't you talk about that?
Yes. So I did end up starting a blog, a website for people with dermatographia. So it's like a resource, and it's got a lot of comments from other people and input, and people kind of like respond to each other and back and forth and give each other tips and advice, because a lot of times people are like, I don't care. I don't want to drink a bunch of water. I don't want to exercise. Just tell me what pill I can take, And like, that's fine. Everybody has their own way of doing it. But if somebody does want to explore maybe some more like natural, holistic ways to treat the condition, I have a lot of information on there. My blog is called Skin Tome, like tome, like it's, I know people always think it's skin to me, which it could be that too, I guess, but I think of it as Skin Tome. So I just go into detail about like things like healing my gut and, like just being careful about what I put into and on my body. And like you said, skin is the largest organ of the body. So what you're going to put something that has like disgusting toxic ingredients on your skin, that gets absorbed. It goes right into your system. Oh.
I'm curious, for those of you in the audience, before today's presentation, how many of you have heard of dermatographia? Oh, good number. Okay.
Great. I'm so glad, because it is really one of my passions in life to spread the word about the condition so everybody knows what it is. So then people don't have to go through what I went through, where it's like I accidentally scratch my cheek and then somebody's like, what, did you just get scratched by a cat? Or, like, what happened to your face? It's like, who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear somebody say, what happened to your face? So anyway, now if you see somebody with a big welt on their face, you'll know.
So one thing I just want to say, there's so many illnesses like this that have small, well, this one, like we said, can have 9.5 million people. But there's Facebook groups, there's individual patients with illnesses doing their own blogs and things. So if you come across something and you want to know how people feel about having them, there's a group for it. You just need to Google it or go on Facebook and type in the illness. You will find a support group and you can see what people are going through with almost any illness. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and actually, physicians will often suggest those kinds of forums for patients for a community of support. And I've had many colleagues who are aware of what's happening in the community forums like that, so they can offer that as a resource as well, so people can connect with other people.
One thing that I also wanted to share, I just thought of, is there's been kind of an uptick in cases because of the vaccines. So a lot of people, it seems like a large number of people have developed dermatographia because of the COVID vaccines for whatever reason. So I've been getting a lot of emails and stuff about that. And I am very much pro-science, pro-vaccine. But it's like, I wonder, what the link is there, where they don't have anything else come up, just all of a sudden they have dermatographia.
What's the expression? Correlation does not mean causation. So we don't know.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have just never really felt the need to treat it, so that hasn't changed. Although it did encourage me to make some diet and lifestyle changes that have lessened the severity of the condition for sure. But when I first started doing this work, it was very, very uncomfortable for me to be using my own body. And then especially when I started doing the stuff where you can actually see my face, some of it's downstairs, but that was really hard. I hate being in front of the camera. So it was kind of like a good challenge, to get comfortable in front of the camera. But it's part of it is like getting older too, I think. Just now that I'm in my 40s, it's like I don't care as much about what other people think. I still want to look good and feel good, but I'm not as concerned as I was when I was younger with how I look. And but as far as accepting my body, that's kind of like accepting my body as a whole. But with the dermatographia, having that outlet or that expression of it has definitely helped. It's because it's given me the courage to respond to people in in a more empowered way. Or, if I get I don't get those comments much anymore because my skin doesn't really do that as much. But when, like I said, if I would have a scratch somewhere and people would freak out and wonder what was going on, then it's it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable. But then once I made a switch, okay, sure, you want to talk about this? I'll talk about it. I'll tell you all about it. And this is what it is. And you can make art with it. And, so it's definitely affected that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sharing your art.